February Promising. This is our February Promising Practice Roundtable. Thank you all for joining us. As folks get settled, please go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. We'd like to hear we'd like to see who's joining us in the Zoom room today. You can go ahead and put your name, pronouns.
I'm in a meeting, but it's like,
oh, if you can also mute yourself for now, if not speaking. Again, you can put on the chat your name, pronouns, position, and campus or organization. And we'll wait a few more minutes for folks to join us. We had a lot of signups for today, so I'll just give it a few minutes and give folks a chance to also get settled. Great, so we have someone joining us from Skyline, welcome. Cal Soap, welcome at Riverside. Compass Charter Schools, thank you for joining. Miracosta, Barstow, somebody else from Sierra. Great. Yeah, as folks are coming in, please introduce yourself in the chat. We'll get started in a few minutes. Great. UC Riverside. I think this last one is San Jose State. And if you can mute yourself for now before while we're not speaking yet. Great. CSAC. We also have somebody from Riverside. LAUSD, welcome. I'll just give it one more minute. Great. As folks are coming in, please introduce yourself so we can see who's in the room with us today. I think I'm going to go ahead and get us started since we're about 3 minutes past 9:30. But again, welcome to our February Promising Practice Roundtable. We're here to talk to you all about expanding access to the California DREAM Act. And if you have not joined us before, and this is your first time in a roundtable, welcome. These are our virtual monthly spaces for California educators to gain different strategies and resources to support undocumented student success at their campus. Through these spaces, we really hope that you get a chance to get connected with dedicated colleagues from across the state, promote cross-campus and organizational learnings, and build solutions to common challenges together. If you're joining us from outside the state, welcome too. We do hope that some of the learnings here today will be applicable to your own work, and do also want to encourage folks to keep introducing themselves so we get a sense of who is in the room with us today. And my name is Madeline Villanueva, she, her pronouns. I'm the Interim Director of Higher Education at Immigrants Rising, and also was a beneficiary actually of the California DREAM Act when I was a student, and know that there's been a lot more challenges, right, to this season around the application. And so we hope to just share a little bit more of the resources and strategies that folks are trying out to address some of those challenges. And I also want to give a quick minute for my staff, for my colleague, Ugo, to introduce himself too. He'll be doing tech support for the session.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this space. My name is Hugo Lopez Munoz, and I'm a programs coordinator for Immigrants Rising, and I'm happy to be here and support with this effort. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Hugo. Yeah, and thank you for the folks who are introducing themselves. I think we have people from all across the state, so please keep doing that if you haven't had the chance. And I also do want to give a special welcome to a new member of our staff who just started last week, Maria, who is our new higher education manager. If you also want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about you.
Buenos dias. Good morning, everybody. My name is Maria, she, her, ella pronouns. I am super fortunate to be a part of Immigrants Rising. A little bit about myself. I am a product of the California Community Colleges, so I was definitely a transfer student. Also a beneficiary from California Dream Act. In the past, I've worked at community college systems. I was the undocumented liaison and a Dream Center coordinator. I've also been a counselor for Puente, an instructor. And in the past, I've also been able to be the sole person on campus that was processing AB 540s and residency reclassification petitions. So this work is definitely super close to my heart. I got my master's in counseling and I'm currently finishing up my ED at SF State. I was also a former DACA holder, so just recently adjusted my status. And just some fun facts about me, I played college soccer, I've been in a musical, and now that I don't play soccer, I've been riding my Peloton a lot more. So yeah, thank you all for being here. I know this is definitely passionate work, so I'm happy to see everybody here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Maria. And hopefully folks will get a chance to kind of connect with Maria and see her in more of these spaces moving forward. But glad to welcome her to the team. And so I'll transition us to let you all know about like what we have planned for you all in this next time we have together. So we're wrapping up all the grounding and welcome right now, and then do want to do a quick kind of like check-in activity to kind of see what are some of the efforts that's going on around California Dream Act and your campus or organization. We'll also just kind of do a quick overview of the financial aid landscape, which I know everybody here is very well aware of, given all the work that you all do. But that's to help set us up for our next sections with our speakers, where we do want to cover how to navigate just some of the conversations we're likely having right now with undocumented and mixed status students and families. And then we'll hear from some great speakers in our Promising Practices panel. And then we'll give folks a chance to kind of reflect, think about next steps, ask questions, connect with each other in our Building Collective Solutions breakout groups before closing out the space with an evaluation. And then you'll also notice that we are recording this meeting today because we do hope to share the recording and all materials shared with you all after the session in a follow-up email. Actually, all registrants will be getting that. And so before we kind of fully get started, I do also want to give a quick preview of who you'll be hearing from today. And I'll also ask the folks now to maybe introduce themselves so that when we get to their session, to their section later, we'll kind of just jump into the questions. And so yeah, if we can have kind of like Arabi introduce themselves first, and then we'll go in the order of the screen.
Sounds good. Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Arabi. I am the co-founder of an organization known as First Gen Empower. We partner with high school districts, community colleges, four-year colleges, really you name it, anyone in the education space, to ensure that you all have the capacity to support your first gen, low income, and especially now your undocumented students. So in the past few months, we have been launching our Know Your Rights trainings throughout campuses, making sure that educators are aware of what to do and guidance if ICE or other immigration agencies come to campus. We also provide resources on, guiding students through college and financial aid conversations. I'll talk more about a resource that we have for you later today. And this space is important to me, and this work is important because I'm a formerly undocumented immigrant myself. And without the California Dream Act, I would have never been able to complete college, let alone go to law school and become an attorney. So I'm very grateful for all the advocacy of those who have come before us, and I'm really honored to continue the work moving forward for our next generations of students. Really happy to be here. And Madeline, should I pass it on to another person? Joe, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody. My name is Joe Avila. I work at Sierra College. I'm a financial aid specialist, and I am the point of contact for our students who are completing the California Dream Act. And I do also appointments, one-on-one appointments with our students, and having those conversations, and also trying to find resources for our students. We just don't want to have them fill out the California Dream Act and then that's it. But we do try to help them help them with books, parking, any other resources on campus, laptops. So I'm happy to be here and to share my experience with you guys.
And Cynthia, if we can have you go next.
Good
Thank you, Jo.
morning, everyone. My name is Cynthia Galarza. I'm the AB 540 Financial Aid Advisor at Cal State University, Los Angeles. Just like Joe, I work specifically with the AB 540 students. We do manual packaging over at our campus. So I'm very hands in deep with all of our students awarding and packaging, and we look for other options for students to go ahead and fund their education and offer them information to the resources that are available to them. A lot of the times they're just not aware of what they actually are entitled to based off of the tuition that they're paying for. So we go ahead and try to educate and work in collaboration with many departments in the university to make sure that our students are successful and can move forward.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Hi, everybody. I'll round out the presenters today. My name is Catherine Custodio. I'm a financial aid counselor at UC Berkeley. And just like the previous two financial aid people in our team, I also work with our undocumented student population. Primarily, I'm the liaison for our undocumented student program, or USP. So I've been doing this work for some time across a few different types of colleges. So I'm happy to continue this work at UC Berkeley and bringing the experience I have to make sure that we're not only working to support these students with advising, but also programming and any other resources we can provide. So I'm happy to provide more information with my experience in our panel later.
Great, thank you all. So we'll hear from all of our amazing speakers later on today. But before we do that, we do want to hear from you all in our audience today with our check-in question. And so we know it's been especially challenging, right, this season, just in supporting undocumented mixed status students and families. But we know that you're doing something also on your campus to kind of address what's been happening. And so we want to hear what that is. And so our check-in question for today is, what are the efforts that your campus or organization is taking to support California DREAM Act applicants? And you'll answer the question through slido.com. We'll put this question and the information on the chat. You either use a browser, go to slido.com and use this code that's listed on the screen, or you can also use this QR code that's here. And any effort is really welcome, no matter how small you think it is, no matter how big it is, because I think any effort that we're all taking collectively together, right, can help continue to connect students to those resources around financial aid in a kind of concerning time. So I'll give folks a few minutes to go ahead and write in their answers. Okay, I'm going to transition. I'm starting to see some, I'm starting to see some of the answers come in. So let me transition slides right now so we can look at them together. Okay, we'll see what's coming up. And answers, again, are anonymous, right? So feel free to be as descriptive with some of your answers. But we're seeing, we have working with program services coordinators, workshops, one-on-ones. Somebody talked about providing a $175 grant. So maybe we'd want to hear a little bit more from that person. Some updated language, communications, collaborations with financial aid and DocuCenter, overview session to raise awareness with data safety concerns, individualized support, trainings to ensure that they have the best information. This person was honest in naming many delays. Counselors from LAUSD offering after school and Saturday support session. Great, lots more communication. Google site for school district. Okay, we'll keep these coming in, but I'm curious if anybody wants to kind of share a little bit more about what they're doing verbally or over the chat. I'm also kind of curious to the person who said $175 grant, if they want to talk a little bit more about that. And connecting. with additional support. So you'll see some of the social media graphics I have here on the screen as part of like a toolkit that they created, as well as like some language to be shared with students and families for like different external communications in English and Spanish, and some additional dates for Cash for College webinars too. And some new resources to support mixed status families. They have this new guide for folks who are just getting started in their financial aid like process as a family. And then this you have choices guide as well that kind of helps families like assess their risk, understand their options, and make like informed decisions around financial aid. After that. And I won't put all of the links in the slide now, but folks will have access to these if you have not seen this quite yet. And we know that that extension is really much needed because I think folks might have also seen this as well. But unfortunately, across the state, we are very behind in general with financial aid. This race to submit data from CSAC shows like California high school seniors, like financial aid applications are pretty below this year, less than 50%, as you can see here on the left side. And then on the right side too, we're seeing like less applications completed and submitted compared to February 2023, when the application deadline was also on March 2nd, but which has been extended at this point, right? Unfortunately, this trend is like specifically affecting undocumented students as we see like this further decline for the California DREAM Act compared to the 23-24 cycle. It's again down 38%. And then first-time FAFSA filers from mixed status families are also down by about 44%. The California DREAM Act, unfortunately, has been in decline for a while now, I think further exacerbated by the pandemic and really by a lot of what's happening today, as you can see in the chart that's right here at the bottom. And while I don't think we can fully address that individually, right, or even as campuses, without kind of dealing with the whole political climate, we are hopeful that there are some actions we can take to at least increase the numbers a little bit more with this extra month that we have. And so hopefully our panelists can give a little bit more like ideas around that as well. But I do want to give this quick resource too, because concerns around student data and information is kind of one of the main concerns that families have, right, when they're thinking about applying for financial aid. And so we do have this resource I want to share with you all today around just 10 practices to safeguard undocumented student data. While we can't make guarantees, right, unfortunately our institutions can't make guarantees about whether or not this information will be shared, there are current laws protecting the information and proactive ways campuses can take to make sure that they're like doing the best that they can to make sure that this information is protected, and to help encourage students, right, that they should still be able to kind of apply for financial aid. I think the link was put in the chat, but do want to give a quick shout out because this resource was created by Solutions for Institutions, which is led by our previous higher education director, Nancy Jeditis. And it has like additional resources and examples of these strategies in action. So if you want to kind of check a little bit more of that out, I won't go over each of the practice right now, but I think the first part is really making sure that institutions and leaders and personnel do understand the current state and federal protections, including FERPA, which is still active, and then the current California laws that we have, having campus-wide protocols around data collection and storage, and also making sure that that access is limited to trusted data custodians who may need that information for the work that they do. and even providing trainings on how student service professionals can like take extra precautions so they're not like inadvertently disclosing students' immigration status. So thinking about the different processes you have on campus, is immigration status a question you're asking? And why is that, right? If it's not necessary to. So please check out this guide a little bit further to get some of those practices. But I will transition us to our first speaker to talk a little bit more about how folks are kind of like navigating some of the conversations that we're having with students and families with the constant changes folks are kind of dealing with. And so, Arabi, I'll go ahead and turn it back to you to kind of get us started.
Thank you. Yeah, so I want to go over some very high-level best practices, and everything that I'm talking about today is coming from a resource guide that First and Empower, Immigrants Rising, and SoCalCan has released together. If folks could, or someone could drop the link in the chat. The purpose of this resource guide really is to provide talking points, best practices, and some assessment questions to help both your undocumented students and students from mixed status families understand their comfort with applying for financial aid. It's also meant to provide you some talking points as you discuss financial aid. So things like, if someone is saying, I don't feel safe applying for FAFSA, what can you tell that student? Or if they're saying, I don't really feel safe applying for financial aid at all, being able to have those conversations around data privacy, which we know has been top of mind for a lot of our students, but it can be really challenging to kind of distinguish between, what state financial aid is versus federal financial aid. So the resource guide covers, and I'll drop here, these 4 things. So sample talking points, like I mentioned, best practices, some questions to help students from mixed status families assess their risk and comfort with submitting FAFSA, and then examples of benefits of higher ed. So from that, I'll mention a few things. The first one is reaffirming students' feelings, right? A lot of our students are afraid. They think that, applying for financial aid may put themselves or their family members at risk. If they're expressing those concerns about, opting out because of these risks or concerns, we want to make sure that we're validating them because they are valid feelings and concerns. And from that, just letting them know, listen, even though you're feeling this way, here's what's actually going on. As Madeline mentioned earlier on, CADA is a state financial aid application, and CSAC has reiterated multiple times that they will not be sharing any CSAC data with federal immigration agencies for immigration purposes, unless there is a order signed by a judge or some type of warrant, which are really hard to get and most likely will not be handed out by a judge just because they're not relevant for federal immigration enforcement purposes. So we really want to emphasize that CADA data is not the same as FAFSA, and that CSAC has emphasized multiple times that this data is safe. As for FAFSA, as of today, we don't know of any credible information that FAFSA data is being used for immigration enforcement purposes. That doesn't mean that things may not change in the future, but for now, we have not heard of anything otherwise. So just being able to kind of distinguish between the two is really critical when working with undocumented students and students from mixed status families. Another best practice here is not to seek information about a student or family's immigration status. A lot of students are feeling this sense of, I want to keep this information, not disclose it as much as I can, right? They may not be feeling safe on campus, especially as some of you have been sharing. They don't know if what's going to happen if immigration agencies are able to come to campus. And so it's completely understandable that they may not want to share that data or that information with you all. And in that scenario, we encourage you all to let the students lead the information and lead the conversation. So if they want to disclose, that's great. But if they don't, you can advise the student broadly of all of their options and help them decide what they may or may not qualify for. So a good example would be if a student is FAFSA eligible, but their families are undocumented, you can let them know that CADA is an option for them. They will be forfeiting federal aid, but they will still qualify for institutional and state financial aid. And in the future, if they wish to, they can always transfer their application back to FAFSA, so from CADA back to FAFSA. So just letting them know that that's an option, and if that's relevant to them, they can think about it. We also want to emphasize that financial aid remains accessible for all of our students. right? Here in California, our undocumented students have a wealth of different options as it relates to going to college. They have available state financial aid through Cal Grants. They have available Dream Loans, the DSIC program, and many, many other forms of financial aid. Just because there is a lot of anti-immigrant rhetoric coming from the federal government does not impact their access to financial aid here in the state of California. So we really want to emphasize that, just to, again, separate the discourse at the federal level with what's happening at the state level. And finally, excuse me, we're hearing from students that they're thinking, what's the point of going to college, right? If they are no longer eligible for DACA, or maybe are not seeing any other pathway to legal status, they're not able to work legally, they are feeling some sense of, I just don't see the point of going to college anymore. If they're already in college, maybe they're feeling some sense of they don't see a point in continuing to pursue their higher ed degree if they can't work legally afterwards. And so for those students, we are trying to emphasize the benefits of higher ed. The very last page of the resource guide actually shows some very concrete examples you can provide to students as it relates to the benefits, right? College can open up opportunities for them to pursue entrepreneurship or independent contracting. I was a transfer student at UC Berkeley, and I received a grant there that allowed me to start First Gen Empower. And I think without being in a higher ed space where I was able to apply for funding like this, I don't know if I would be where I am today and being able to do this work. So higher ed can open up a lot of doors for our students, and we really do want to emphasize that. And also that students don't remain the same immigration status forever, right? They are able to maybe at some point in the future adjust their status. So we want them to kind of prepare as much as they can now for whatever may happen in the future. And for our students here in California, all of the public college systems offer free legal services. So please do refer them to an immigration attorney through those services, just so they can talk to a qualified immigration professional and see if there's any pathways available for them now, or maybe even in the future. If they're attending private universities, sometimes those universities also offer legal services. So I encourage you to look around to see what may be available on campus that you can refer students out to. I'll pause here and see if there's any questions around any challenges that you're facing as you work with undocumented students, any conversations that are coming up that you're kind of struggling to maybe walk students through, and maybe as a group we can brainstorm some solutions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Arabi, and do invite folks to add just any, like things surfacing for folks, any questions already coming up, and we can kind of take note of that and try to answer them as we go through today's session. But thank you for sharing all of that, and I think really kind of providing that reassurance for students, right? Unfortunately, I think there's no guarantees in today's world right now as it relates to the undocumented community, but there are still opportunities, protections, resources available here in California, right? And it may be scary, right, to kind of pursue those right now, but how can you help kind of students understand that those are still available and there's still like pathways for them, including through financial aid. And this guide that Arabi shared can kind of help navigate some of those conversations. We know we still need our leadership to be giving this information, but I think it can also make a really big difference if your students even hear it from at least one person. And so I think with that, we'll kind of transition into our panel of our campus financial aid folks, just to kind of add a little bit more to some of the strategies that Arabi mentioned. But I'll have maybe Ugo support in spotlighting our panelists at this point. And then we'll kind of kick us off with this first question. I think folks already kind of touched upon this in their introductions, but how is your campus kind of addressing some of the challenges we're seeing with undocumented students this financial aid season? And if you could share any helpful resources, strategies, or collaborations that you all are doing. And then we'll go in the same order we went with the introduction. So we'll have Joe kick us off.
Hello, everyone. So we were kind of experiencing as well as communication coming out late. So what I was doing was kind of pushing, my leadership, my director on, what are we doing? How are we keeping our students safe? Because we get those questions, am I safe here on campus? And, if you just say, oh, well, yeah, you are, that's not very helpful if there's not a plan. So just pushing my director, and the last roundtable that we had was very informative for me into getting some of those things kind of implemented here, getting the emails out, talking to other departments and other allies on campus on one of the flyers. I think it was San Mateo Community College had passed out, and creating those steps on what we are going to do as a college to keep our students safe and be able to communicate with to them. And so just having like that type of resource, and also like as far as other resources on campus, with the mental health counseling, we refer our students to our Undocu Center, who has other resources that students can take advantage of. And we have our Basic Needs Center for students who are in need of additional assistance as far as grants, and just any food insecurities. And sometimes we can provide housing, temporary housing opportunities. Just it's case by case, but we can definitely hear the student situation, and we could possibly help. And we're the financial aid office is actively communicating that with our students. And I'm happy to say that I know financial aid department is scary for students, but we've really have a close relationship with our students, that they will come, and sometimes they come to us first, which is kind of weird and amazing at the same time, because like I said, financial aid is scary, but they will come to us first and asking for resources and help, and we will get them to the appropriate departments and the allies in those departments as well.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. I think that speaks really to the trust that you all have been able to build with your students, right, including undocumented students, and really want to highlight just your advocacy in pushing leadership, or like suggesting to leadership to create these like protocols to provide this communications. I think campus administrators right now are kind of scared to say the wrong thing when something happens, and I don't think we always need to react right away. But what are also different ways we can maybe like kind of gently nudge our leadership to, if that's the approach we want to take, to provide some of these like messages of safety that will help students, right, pursue those financial aid opportunities available for them. Cynthia, I'll go with you next.
Like Joe said, communication and transparency is important. So sometimes when students come in and they approach us, it's okay for you to say, I'm not sure, I don't know, but let me get that information for you. And then pursue that, whether you need to communicate with your supervisors or get information from colleagues that you are researching. That is very important. I think students can see if you're unsure and you're giving false information, it makes them very uneasy. So if you're transparent in your communication and honest, then at that point in time, they feel more comfortable and safe to come and say, they're trying to get the information as it's coming, because it's such a moving, fast piece that's happening right now. So many changes occurring, so much news going across. At our campus, we had several scares where they were saying ICE, the presence of ICE is going to be at our campus on these dates. Don't go to school, staff and faculty and students. It's very disruptive, but luckily our higher ups emailed circulations. They've actually emailed on multiple occasions. Initially, when the transfer in administration occurred, there was email circulation. Then also through the notifications of ICE presence, there was emails and notifications sent out. So I believe that communication and transparency is very, very important. And then also creating a safe space for students to come and approach you. A lot of the times our financial aid office particular is open, so they don't want to really share that information to anyone. We do have a Dream Resource Center here where I go and I meet with students twice a week. It's behind doors. They can come in, they can share their concerns and their situations, because every case is different. It's a one-on-one, and you can't really treat individuals kind of as a whole, because each case is different, and you do want that human touch. You want that one-on-one contact. You want to be able to reassure and ensure that the information that they're getting is tailored to their specific circumstance, and allow for the transparency to happen on both ends and create that that two-way communication.
Yeah, thank you, Cynthia. I think that's really great to highlight, also to kind of show up, especially now, to places that are trusted by undocumented students. In that case, in your case, it's the Dream Resource Center on campus, right? And creating that space where they do feel like they can seek out the support and talk to you a little bit more privately when it feels like that's not really a safe thing to do right now. Right. And again, like uplifting the like trust that you've also built with that community of students on campus. Catherine, I'll go to you next.
Thank you. And yeah, really everything that Joe and Cynthia have said, really making sure that that communication is key. You know, we've done things like updated our website with as much information as we have at the moment regarding, you know, what we would recommend for mixed status families, the safety of the California Dream Act, as well as putting it, you know, in newsletters, and it's being sent to, you know, staff as a whole. So that way, not just students are being informed, but also our campus community. But outside of that, it's funny talking about these things because working in previous institutions where I was regularly advising with the undocumented student population, that was actually not something that we had set up at Berkeley. Of course, students were able to come to our office, but as we came to find out, they weren't, you know, particularly our undocumented student population were not necessarily using those services. They were using that at our USP resource center. So what we decided with everything coming from the election was to really create formalized hours. So even though students could reach out and create, you know, a one-on-one appointment with me on their own time, now that we have these formalized hours, it gives students a time to actually set up an appointment with me to have that conversation. And we also have continued our workshops. You know, we do have our overall financial aid workshops that are offered by our financial aid office, but as was mentioned, sometimes students want to be in their own space. You know, having these workshops in our undocumented student resource center, that really is somewhere where we're coming to the student, as you mentioned, Madeline. So I think that has been really important, you know, creating these spaces that are Dream student specific, so that way they don't feel like they're disclosing their status, you know, or they're not having to explain their situation, right? They know that this is someone who's helping me with their California Dream Act and can answer those related questions. And then you start to see that not only are they asking financial aid questions, they start to open up, right, and ask you for different resources. And though you might not always have the answers, as you mentioned, Cynthia, it's having that communication so that way you could provide that information to them. And we're really fortunate to have a lot of the resources, as was mentioned by Joe and Cynthia, that we have legal support, counseling support, as well as academic advising that students can turn to. And these are resources specific to our undocumented student population. But again, just kind of pulling it all back together and just creating these safe spaces, I think has been really key. And just letting students know that we understand, you know, though we might not necessarily understand everything that they're going through, we understand that there are privacy concerns and there are genuine concerns here, and we want to let them know that we're here for them, however we can support them.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine, for just adding different ways to like foster that safe space, right? And I really like your point of also informing other staff members who also don't need to know everything. I think we all should take the pressure off ourselves to like have all the answers for students, but how can we at least communicate enough so that that staff member as well also knows to maybe direct students to you or to whoever else they can on campus so that they are able to find that support. I will, I think like speaking of all the things you all have already set up on your campus, there's also just concerns in general with like prospective students, incoming students who may not be connected to you yet, who may not know about the resources available on your campus. And so I'm wondering if folks can kind of share a little bit about how you've been supporting prospective students or incoming students, if there's any work you all are doing with like local feeder schools or like community-based organizations in your area that's like supporting like incoming California Dream Act students potentially. Whoever wants to go can go first.
I'll go.
first. Oh,
Oh.
sorry, Joe.
Go ahead, Cynthia.
So at our campus, what we're really doing is we're doing a lot of collaboration with the different departments. So we're collaborating with admissions. We're actually going on site with our admissions department to be a financial aid representative. So students are going to have questions about FAFSA and CADA. And so instead of referring that to an admissions advisor, then they actually have a representative from financial aid. So it's kind of a tag team effort where they are going off site and doing outreach with local community colleges and also local high schools. We also do a lot of events with the Dream Resource Center where we send that information out to all of our students through social media. But it's really a lot of collaboration with different departments. It takes a village, and we can't really silo ourselves. So we're lucky that our director is really emphasizing collaboration with other departments on campus and off campus.
Well, thank you, Cynthia. Joe, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so just like Cynthia, I mean, we do have a colleague, a colleague, Alicia Bagley. She is here today, but she is our financial aid / outreach technician. And so she partners with our outreach department, going to our feeder schools and presenting the financial aid, presenting the FAFSA, presenting the California Dream Act. And she has those conversations with the mixed status families who are concerned. And Alicia is very good at giving the options that the parents have. And her and I work closely together. So if there's anything that any problems or anything that arises, we work together on that. And then she is the point of contact for our high school counselors. They have her information, they have my information. I've had high schools also reach out to me that, sometimes I'm like, how did you even find me? But, our information gets out there. And so, that's, and like Cynthia said, it's collaborating with all the other different departments as well, and making sure that our students are getting the information. We also have our FAFSA CADA workshops. We used to have our CADA, like our standalone workshops, but we were noticing that a lot of students weren't coming to that. And so we decided to kind of bring them together. And honestly, it's been packed out mostly we have them every Thursdays from 3 to 5, and it's been packed out. And we do partner with the Center. They have student workers over there that they're allowed to come over to our workshops and assist our CADA students in filling that out as well. And if there's any issues that come up, I'm still here in the office during that time, and they will run over and grab me, and I'm happy to go in and assist. So it does take a village. It's a lot of teamwork.
Yeah, thank you, Joe, for sharing. I think both of you really just speak to the collaboration that's needed, but also kind of like providing a trusted face, like an informative face to the beyond our campus community, right? Because I think I'm still continuing to hear, especially now, of like undocumented students and undocumented families not even knowing of any resources at all. There's some misinformation, unfortunately, being provided in our different spaces or just unclarity about what's available. And so you also, it sounds like, are kind of acting as like trusted folks in the community, and introducing yourself in these different support spaces, right? And I really like the point you provided, Joe, around maybe right now it's not time to just do like individual CADA workshops. How can we like remarket some of these spaces so that there's more privacy potentially that our students are looking for right now, so that they're still able to take advantage of the support, but in a way that feels safe to them too, right? And I think speaking about kind of like mixed status families, I know Arabi kind of touched a little bit upon it, but I'm wondering how folks are kind of like navigating specific support to those students. We actually got a private question right now too that asks like, what if our financial aid didn't even know that CADA is an option for mixed status students? Like, how are you also all kind of maybe informing colleagues to and like equipping them, right, to do some of that mixed status undocumented student support? And again, I'll open it up to anybody who wants to answer this question.
I'm happy to provide, kind of what we've done on our campus regarding this. So we're really fortunate that our, higher ups were very much aware of this. This was not only, I mentioned, put out to students and to the campus community, but we also really started this game plan when we began our yearly workshops. Again, as I mentioned, we do general ones through our financial aid office, but we were also doing ones in partnership with our undocumented student program. So just really letting students know that that is an option was key. And I think outside of that, for, addressing that question that came in of, our office didn't necessarily even know, it's a little bit harder when you're also trying to navigate not only the application process, but what happens after the fact. So I'll be honest that even as a school, we're still figuring out that piece. Yes, we're very much supportive of working through the CADA with our mixed status families. And we have happily done quite a handful already for this upcoming school year. But because there's still some things up in the air on exactly what will happen, will mixed status students become eligible for the California Dream Loan? Will students who could potentially have been eligible for federal grants like the Pell Grant, would they be able to then become eligible for those later on? So there's a lot of still questions that, like Cynthia, I think really mentioned earlier, we don't know the answers to. And it's okay to say that you don't necessarily know those answers, but I think it's great that you at least have that communication going that, okay, now that you know that it's available, what can we do next? And, that might change down the line with, in terms of maybe once everything comes out, we figure out, oh, maybe it's okay to submit the FAFSA that these students might then end up moving forward with that application instead, and working with them later on in the school year to swap back their application. But at the end of the day, I think when it comes to that, just being as transparent as we can with the information that we have, that's really the approach that we've done, and just assisting, each student's case. And, it hasn't always been easy. I know we've ran into some hiccups already. We've seen with some of our students who are FAFSA filers filling out a CADA, especially if that account, because it's now linked to their, CSAC account, if it's kind of up in the air, we've already had to have some cases where we've had to reset things. So for anyone who's going to be guiding someone through a CADA that's from a mixed status family, you might have to connect with CSAC to have the student's account fully reset. So, there are still some obstacles to it, but we're moving forward as best as we can and letting the students know that it is an option, and really also talking that out with them. It's not just a conversation of, okay, well, this is an option, let's move forward with that. I think sometimes having that one-on-one discussion with the student to find out, I think you mentioned it best, Cynthia, it's not a one size fits all. It's really individual to that student. And you've also mentioned that, Joe, too, is like that one-on-one personal advising. Sometimes having these general workshops, like, yes, we could talk about it to every student, but that doesn't mean that it fits every student's scenario. So yeah, I think that's kind of been our approach. I would love to hear, any other approaches that have been beneficial. I'm happy to take any ideas to see how we could better implement them in our campus. But that's what we've done on our end.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. Yeah, I think there's still a lot of moving pieces, things being figured out by everybody at this point around the actual, like, even awarding of mixed status students through CADA. I also have a lot of questions around that. But I think, yeah, like being kind of direct and transparent too with like the process that you all are trying to figure out. I think for folks who are like, they like feeling like, oh, but like we don't have all the information moving forward. I think it's also about like keeping up with things as they move forward and then just like uplifting those conversations in your department to take action if needed. And Cynthia, I think you also had something to add to this question, so I'll just turn it to you too.
Yeah, I've had several students actually approach me who've already completed their have had completed their FAFSA in prior years, but now are really considering completing a CADA instead, and what that entailed. And that really, it's very simple when you look at it on the front end and you say, okay, well, if you complete this, it is an option. You are going to forego your federal aid and what that entails and what that is going to look like financially for the student and how they're going to be covered. But that actually did bring up a little bit, like Catherine said, you don't really know what happens on the back end. And so it is important for us to start thinking about what could potentially happen on the back end and how that is going to impact the students. It's great if a student self-identifies, then we can look at it individually. However, what if you have students that have completed FAFSAs before and now are completing CADAs? Are those coded differently? Are they going to be brought in the same way as all of the CADAs are normally? Are you going to be able to award them the same? Is there going to be a change in status? At least when we award our students, they're coded differently. There's different codes that are utilized for CADA students and FAFSA students. So on the back end, it's important that if this is something that is going to continue, the conversations need to start with the systems individuals, who does programming, who does coding, who does, and how and what that is going to entail and what is that going to look like. Because if not, what's going to happen is that these students are not going to get award letters and they're not going to be able to finance. And as stated earlier by Arabi, they may just decide, I'm not going to continue my education because of it's just too much of a hassle. So if we know that that is something that is a potential that can happen, let's start addressing it now sooner than later, because now we can brainstorm, we can see what's going on and have those conversations with the systems teams, with individuals that will have to make changes in process and policy. So that is definitely a food for thought, that we want to start looking at it, because I know that's going to come, unfortunately.
Yeah, thank you, Cynthia. Yeah, I think it's helpful to uplift like the questions that are coming up, even though we don't have answers to them yet. Maybe that's another roundtable session. We'll come back with you all again once you kind of come up with a little bit of different solutions. But I think just the strategy around like asking these questions already, engaging with leaders, engaging with the different departments that could kind of help with the solution is a proactive way to kind of approach the problem now too, or the issue right now too. I know we have a question in the chat. I'll just hold onto that for now, but we're kind of getting to the end of our panel. And so I'll just ask a final question to folks. Arabi, if you're still around, we also invite you to answer this question. But I do just want to close out with just what advice can you all provide to practitioners, whether they're in financial aid or maybe working in the undocumented student program and other departments, other schools that support or working with undocumented students. What advice do you have for them as they kind of move through this financial aid season? And anybody can go first, and then if you could just pass it to the next person so we can be on time.
I can go. One of the, as we're in these positions, it's a lot of trial and error that we go through. So it's like we try to figure out what works and what doesn't work. So the biggest advice that I would give, and that's really benefited our campus, is creating your team, finding out allies in different departments, like admission and records, counseling, the EOPS, Basic Needs Center, faculty, because sometimes, like in financial aid, I mean, Cynthia probably knows. I mean, most of the time we have our head down, we're typing, we're processing, we're trying to get things done. And so we're not aware of other students that may have fallen through the cracks. So by partnering with other departments, we're able to find these students. And it happens all the time where students, it could be at the end of the semester and someone's bringing a student to me and they haven't filled out their California Dream Act. And it's like, okay. So it's like, now we're in a rush to get that done and get them, at least the tuition waiver or any other resources. But so the biggest for me was having that team together, because once you have that team, then people know who you are. And so if a student does go to their teacher and they're just like, hey, I'm having trouble with financial aid, let's talk to Joe. Let's instead of saying, well, go to financial aid and talk, because most time they're not going to come. They will probably just stay away. But if they know that there's somebody in financial aid that's a point of contact, they will come. And then also for resources, because like I've said, we've had students that come in, we're filling out the Dream Act, and then they're talking about life, they're talking about other things and stuff, and things that may need help, like a laptop, or maybe they need our Basic Needs Center gives out gas cards, and they give out grocery cards. So it's like, okay, hey, let me get you with this person, and we can get you a gas card at least, or we can get you a grocery card. And then with EOPS, the stuff that they offer, if you know that the student is eligible for that, hey, let's go talk to the point of contact over there and get that application done, and then get you the resources. So for me, it was just building that team and knowing that people that I could trust, and that I can walk the student over there, and knowing that they're in good hands and that they will get the resources that they need.
Thank you, Joe. Arabi, would you like to go next?
Yeah, and I'll touch on a little bit of a different kind of perspective here, which is the power of advocacy. I know some folks were mentioning in the chat that your district or your school system hasn't issued any guidance yet, and so you don't really know where to go, or what protocol to follow. We recently heard from one of our partners, which is a university system, that because of pressure put on by individual staff members across the different campuses, the system leadership eventually just kind of caved in and issued guidance on now what to do if immigration agencies are either coming to campus or requesting to access student data, right? Things like financial aid data or admissions data. They initially were hesitant because of whatever reasons, including political reasons, but it was because so many staff members who work directly with students were pushing and emailing and advocating that finally they caved and issued kind of district-wide guidance. So I just want to emphasize that you all have so much power. I know even when it doesn't feel like it, you have the power to create and help push forward guidance like this that can make our students feel safer, knowing that, okay, if something were to go down, there is a protocol in place that staff members and faculty and everyone's going to follow to make sure our students can remain as safe as possible. And so campuses continue to feel like a safe space for them and not a place where they have to worry about potentially getting arrested or detained. So I just want to throw that out there as something to think about as you're working with students. Also, how can you work with your campus leadership and kind of higher level system-wide leadership to push for greater guidance that kind of is standardized across all departments. So, we don't have to do the work of assuading and working with our students to let them know, okay, here's what I will do, because that can only have limited impact if they don't feel that same sense of safety from all staff members across campus.
Thank you, Arabi. Catherine?
I think one approach, I just want to remind everyone, you as, a counselor or whatever your role may be, I understand you're also probably going through it too. So NASFA, which is a financial aid administration, they sent an email recently talking about the power of pause. And that really got me thinking of just making sure that for yourself, you really take that time to step back and not feel overwhelmed with everything you're hearing. Because every day you check the news and it could be 5 new updates that day. That can be so overwhelming. So as much as we want to make sure that we're creating these spaces for our students to make sure that they are reassured and feel safe, you also want to make sure you're doing that for yourself, giving yourself grace that you're also someone going through all these changes that are happening. So make sure you're not really overwhelming yourself and making it seem that you're the only one that has to make these decisions. It's okay to take a step back and kind of what Joe mentioned, find that team that you can also rely on so that way it doesn't feel as overwhelming. So that's what that's as far as a own personal thing I can recommend, just because I understand I've definitely been down those rabbit holes of just you're looking at article after article and it feels like a lot, especially tied into your work. So make sure you're taking that time for yourself.
Cynthia, do you want to close us off?
I think that it's important to emphasize that what Catherine, Joe, and Arabi said. I mean, they're all great tools. We need to create a team. We need to keep mindful of ourselves. We need to advocate not only for our campus, but also for our students. We need to not forget that we're not alone. And that it is crazy times, but we do need to take a deep breath and know that the tortoise won the race. So it may seem like you're not really making any headway, but just take it one step at a time, and we will definitely make changes. But we need to collaborate with one another and be mindful of each other. And these venues that are provided for us are so wonderful. And I appreciate everyone that took their time to come in and speak and let me know that I'm not alone and emphasize some of the things that I'm doing, because it takes a team to make sure that we can get through all of the challenges that we are faced daily.
Yeah, thank you all. Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself, but thank you all for sharing all that you did. I think we heard like pausing, stepping back, right? Collaborating, building your team, advocating as different tools to help us all get kind of through this world that we live in currently. So really appreciate you all just kind of sharing some of the things you're trying out. Because again, there's no one blanket solution, but I think there's little things that we can do to kind of push forward in the right direction a little bit more. So do want to invite our audience to give a lot of different appreciations, emojis, whatever way that you do it to our speakers, not only for what they shared today, but also like the individual work you all are also doing on your campus. And so I think for the interest of time and as folks are kind of like marinating with the information, panelists, if you do want to stick around to join us for this next part, but I do want to transition us to our next section, which is more for folks to start like reflecting, connecting with each other and thinking about the different things shared with you all in the space today. We'll be doing a quick 10-minute breakout group. Actually, we'll do 8 minutes right now. I think I'm looking at the time. But we do want folks to kind of think about these guiding questions here in your breakout groups. What was something new you learned from this session? What are some challenges? What are some opportunities around the California Dream Act in your campus or region? And what are some next steps you're taking from this meeting? And so I'm going to have Ugo open those breakout rooms for us. And I think the questions are already in the chat if it's not yet, or we'll throw that in the chat, but we'll take a few minutes to do that, and then we'll come back and close out the space. Thank you, Maria. Okay, and then if we can just check, because last time there were people in breakout groups where they close out this space. But I do want to share our evaluation form here. We'll throw it in the chat. This evaluation is really important for us to kind of think about how we are moving forward and providing these spaces with you all. And should even have a space, I think. If it's not there, we'll add it. What are some kind of emerging like issues coming up for you all? What kind of support are you looking for? Feel free to put that on there. And we'll share this with all registrants too if your folks have left before our time at the end here. We also will be holding our next Promising Practice Roundtable next month on AB 540, which is a really important component, right, of financial aid for undocumented students. We'll also throw the schedule in the chat. So folks have that, but moving forward in this semester, we'll be doing 4th Thursdays of each month from 9:30 to 11. And then if you do want to keep up with everything happening, please sign up for our Undocu Digest if you haven't already. We do this bi-weekly newsletter to promote our events, resources, and just any news, highlights, support related to the undocumented community. So if you're looking for that trusted resource, we can be that trusted resource for you. And this is one of the ways to stay updated around that. And you can email me directly to be added to our listserv. It does go through MailChimp. So if your school organization has some specific filters around that, I've heard that if you add my name as a contact, my email address as a contact, you'll be able to receive the digest. And then just I do want to uplift just some additional offerings we have here at Immigrants Rising for you to share with your students, alumni, and colleagues potentially. We have our next round of our wellness support groups starting in March. And these are 6-week virtual spaces for undocumented folks to feel connected and supported. There's different groups based on need and identity. We have a new one for undocumented educators starting, and there's also one specific for California higher ed students. We're also looking to improve our career support of undocumented students. I think this is also a collaboration with First Gen Empower, but we have launched this undocumented college student career survey for anybody who's attending a college or university across the US, and there's a deadline at the end of March for that. And then we know that pathways to beyond college is uncertain for many folks, right? And so we also want to uplift our Spark Entrepreneurship Learning Hub for folks to just get the foundation on how to generate income through contracting or business. And let's see okay. And the last thing is I do want to give another great shout out to our amazing panelists. Here's all of their email addresses. We'll also throw that in the chat. Please reach out to them around any strategizing support you all need. I think they're all very open to collaborating in this space. And you did hear that you need to build your team and collaborate to really be successful in the work. So really encourage you all to connect if needed. And I think that's my time right there. Or actually, we're 5 minutes early. But I will wrap us up and really thank folks for being here today. And we do hope that we see you at our next Promising Practice Roundtable next month. So have a great rest of your day. And thank you again to all our amazing panelists.